Hi, in this video, I'll be talking through my implementation for this sci-fi hover tank vehicle in Unreal Engine 4 and Wwise. Before I start, here's a list of everything I'll be going over so you can skip ahead if you want. I also want to credit Thunder Owl Studios for creating the hover tank asset pack and FreshCan for creating the environment that I used. To start with, the tank has a base engine sound that is just linked to this tank speed RTPC, which is updated by this real speed flow in Unreal Engine. It has a base loop, which is a simple low-end fundamental, and 3 more loops that the sound transitions between at different speeds. So one for idling, one for moving slowly, and one for moving fast. It has an RTPC on the overall pitch that just goes up as the speed increases, as well as an RTPC that's linked to the throttle speed, which I'll get to shortly. So here's how that sounds in game with just the engine soloed. Next is the throttle. This is the loop for when the player is moving forwards or backwards, and is meant to feel like you're really pushing the engine, so it's a bit more interactive and stands out more than the base engine. It's made up of these 2 loops, which loop asynchronously. One which is more airy and almost sounds like steam coming out of the tank, and the other which is lower and more full. They're being processed together, with their volume and pitch linked to how fast the player is moving forward, with this forward speed flow in Unreal Engine controlling the tank throttle RTPC. You can see that the graphs don't just go up from 0 to 1, and that's because the forward speed flow goes from -600 to +600, depending on whether the tank is moving forward or backward. Going back to that extra RTPC on the base engine, it's set so that the volume is reduced at high throttle speeds, so it gets out of the way in the mix and lets the throttle really take over. The throttle loop also has some effects within Wwise, with this distortion having the wet mix brought up as the tank gets faster. This tremolo has a similar RTPC setup, but the rate of the tremolo is also affected by the throttle speed RTPC alongside the wet. This throttle sound is triggered by the player pressing W or S to move the tank forwards or backwards, which then triggers the throttle press or throttle release events, which have a short mechanical sound for immediate player feedback. Then the throttle loop is faded in or out. Here's how that sounds on its own. The tank turning works very similarly to the throttle, with 2 more asynchronous loops. However, only one has pitch automation and tremolo, attached to a new RTPC called tank turn, which is controlled by the turn value flow in Unreal Engine. These also have a short mechanical sound for when the player presses and releases the key to turn the vehicle. Here it is on its own. These 3 blend containers are all being sent to a bus called tank movement, as well as the mechanical sounds for the player inputs, so that they can be glued together with some distortion and compression to prevent the sum of all the loops from getting too loud. So here they are together in game. Onto the other sounds for the tank. The turret at the top has separate loops for rotating and tilting, tied to more float values in the engine that increase when the turret moves and go to 0 when it stops. So the volume and pitch of these are linked to their respective RTPCs, so that the faster the turret is moving, the louder you hear them and the higher pitch they get. I also have these terrain loops that play underneath the tank engine. They're in a switch container that's linked to a line trace in the engine, so they blend from the sound of gravel to the sound of grass and dirt when the tank moves on or off the road. They also have 2 separate loops for when the tank is moving slow and fast, so that when you slow right down, you hear this nice crunchy sound of the terrain under the thrusters of the tank. Here's how that sounds on its own. These tank rattles follow a similar idea, with a fast and slow variation that gets switched out depending on the speed of the tank. But their playback is a bit different. They're both looped random containers with one-shot sounds of metal rattling that have their playback frequency increased by the speed of the tank. So when the tank is moving slowly, you get the occasional rattle, but when it speeds up, they start overlapping and create a constant kind of buzz that never loops exactly because the order of the one-shots is always changing, but it's still a constant sound. I've set the max voice count to 2 to make sure that there are never too many playing at once. Here's how that sounds on its own. Those rattles and terrain loops are also being sent to the tank movement bus so that they blend in with the engine better. The tank has 2 weapons, a laser and a missile launcher. They're both made up of separate body and tail variations, which all have some random pitch variation, and the tails have some slight randomized delay. The missile has 2 separate impact sounds, which are chosen depending on how far away the shot lands as well. The shots and explosions are being sent to this impact bus, which is ducking the tank movement bus slightly. This is so that the tank weapons still stand out at high speeds when the engine is louder. Now for the physics-based impacts. The project came with these explosive barrels to use as target practice for the tank, and I thought it would be fun to make a physics-based impact system for them when they explode. The barrel itself is made up of 6 components that all go flying in different directions when the barrel is destroyed, so I wanted to make each one of them play a sound independently when they bounce around. This is done through this blueprint, which is just duplicated across all 6 components. It starts whenever the component is hit, and these 3 nodes here are staggering how often this whole function happens, by using this do once node that gets reset every 0.2 seconds. Otherwise, if a part of the barrel is rolling or bouncing very quickly, then you get a very unnatural sounding, super fast triggering sound. Next, I'm getting the component velocity and vector length going into a branch so that I can filter out any hits that are below 100. So if the barrel is moving too slowly, then the sound won't even play at all. This vector length is then setting the RTPC in Wwise called barrel velocity. Now, there's the surface dependent part of the sound, where a line trace is being shot downward at the point of impact to determine whether the component is hitting the grass or the gravel, which is then setting the switch attached to an AK component. By attaching unique AK components to each part of the barrel, it means that I can have some bouncing on the grass and others on the gravel simultaneously, and have them both play surface accurate sounds, since the switch is being set on the component and not on the actor as a whole. Then it's just posting the barrel hit event on that same AK component. In Wwise now, the barrel event hit is playing 2 containers, these metal hits and these surface hits. The metal hits are separated out by velocity attached to that barrel velocity RTPC, as well as having their overall volume tied to the same RTPC. So when they hit the ground harder, they play louder. The surface hits are a switch container that change depending on the surface the component hits. And they actually have a closer attenuation than the metal hits, because I think you'd only really hear the gravel or grass moving when the barrel bounces closer to you. So, alongside a general explosion sound for when the barrel initially splits apart, here's how they sound together. So that's everything for this project. Thanks for watching.